Guiding this fireside chat, we have Adjoba Kyiamah, Executive Director of UKGCC. If you could please come to the stage. Joining her is the strategist, veteran strategist with decades of experience in Pan-African policy, development, and private enterprise, the advisor to the President, Goosie Tanoh. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good morning. So soon I'm back again. You're probably going to see me one more time, and then I shall retire for the day. So this time, I'm here covering for my dear friend Steve Gray. He's also a UKGCC UK-based advisory board member, so I'm very happy to cover for him because a little over a year ago, we hosted you to a fireside chat. It was your first public event after the NDC came into office. And it was a very revealing conversation because you shared the vision for the 24-hour economy policy. And so today I'm not going to give you the chance to talk too much about the vision. I think our conversation should focus more on what have you achieved since then in that intervening period. So I will go straight to the point, but before you start talking about what you've done, I would like you to maybe say a little bit about yourself and what you do at the Secretariat.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Augustus Tanoh. If you mention Augustus Tanoh to anybody in Ghana, they won't know who you're talking about. So everybody calls me Goosie, and you're all free to call me as such. I'm a lawyer by training, but I've actually operated mostly in the private sector in the business arena. My background is both in natural resources, particularly petroleum, and negotiating petroleum agreements and petroleum taxation. I've also done some work in diplomacy, and I find myself in the 24-hour seat because I also have an experience in commodity trading and other forms of business enterprise. So, in sum.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This actually feels like a conversation between friends.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, to the question.
Well,
what have you accomplished?
At the time we met, we were in the course of putting together the program. And fortunately, by May 2025, the program was completed, and the program was launched by His Excellency the President July 2nd, 2025. So we're barely a year old. And in that time, at the legislative front, the 24-hour program has now been actualized and institutionalized in the enactment of Law 1164, which is the 24-hour authority law. So now we have an institution that is parliamentarily approved and has statutory authority to act as a coordinating arm for the transformation program that is embedded in the 24-hour economy and accelerator program document. We have done a lot of work, and as you know, the 24-hour program is based on 4 pillars. The first pillar is the modernization of agriculture and integrating it to industry. The second is manufacturing and ensuring that the logistical base for manufacturing exists through efficient supply chains and markets. The third, related to manufacturing industrialization, is also human capital development. What kind of human beings, what kind of workforce do we need to be able to take the next step in our transformation path? All of you have heard that when we were discussing minerals yesterday, that the President has basically asked that by 2030, we should not be exporting raw materials, minerals in raw form or cocoa in raw form, but by some measure of value addition. The reality is that the way in which the 24-hour program is designed also to correct the structural deformities that were left with the colonial economy. I said, and I've said before, that in 1920, Ghana was exporting gold, cocoa, and timber in raw form. In 2026, Ghana's main exports are gold, oil replacing timber, and cocoa in raw form. The idea of the 24-hour economy is to transform this and create a strong industrial base linked to agriculture, linked to logistical supply systems and markets that are efficient. If you take, for instance, any product that is manufactured in Ghana, and you look at the cost buildup, you'd be surprised that logistics, the cost component represented by logistics and transport is almost 60%. The global average is 15%. So the attempt to be able to address this reflects in the 24-hour program by gradually moving away from road transport as a main means of transporting 90% of our goods and utilizing the rail connection between Tema and Akosombo all the way up through the Volta Lake, which is the world's largest man-made lake, to Buipe, and then onwards to Tamale and to the Sahel. So creating a new artery of transportation that lowers the cost of transport per kilometer, per ton kilometer, and also reducing the carbon footprint of the way in which we move our goods, and creating logistical hubs along that Volta Economic Corridor that will bring down the cost of moving goods. And in that corridor also is a deliberate policy to develop agro-ecological parks and industrial parks to manufacture food and beverages, manufacture textiles, manufacture pharmaceuticals, and of course, to be able also to create the infrastructure that allows for all these goods to move by improving, developing the ports along the Volta Lake, and also developing the floating assets in a way that you can move both container cargo, liquid cargo, and dry bulk goods to and from the north to the south. Don't forget that the Volta Basin is a regional basin and offers a regional possibilities that create an integrated market for us in Ghana and West Africa. You have Mali, you have Burkina Faso, you have Niger, and you have Ghana, and almost all these countries also use Tema Harbor as their main throughput and entry point for exporting and importing goods. So that channel from Tema Harbor all the way to Tamale will become an important artery for better, more efficient supply chain systems, and also enhanced production in agriculture, in industry, and also improved market systems as well.
I think you've anticipated a lot of the questions I was going to ask you, but it's fine. It's fine. You talked about the why. I'm curious, in terms of bringing this Volta Economic Corridor project to life, how far have we come? What have we achieved? And where are the opportunities for the UK investors that are sitting in this room that would be interested in taking advantage of this opportunity?
Okay, first of all, I think that the Volta River itself and the construction of the Akosombo Dam is about 1,020 megawatts, was inspired by our first president, Kwame Nkrumah, with the deliberate purpose of industrializing Ghana.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that dream was attenuated after he left office, and it's President Mahama who has revived that ambition and that dream. But it's much more than a dream, because we recognize, first of all, that the very imperative to create and build Akosombo Dam was the first and important recognition that without energy, industrialization is an impossible task.
Yep.
So our first measure, practical measure, was how do we attract energy that is affordable, that's sustainable, that will power the industrial parks and the agroecological parks in the Volta Economic Basin. And don't forget, the Volta Economic Basin touches 75 districts in Ghana, from the Volta region, Savannah region, Northern region, Bono East region, and Greater Accra region, and Eastern region, by the way. So it touches everybody. And that's where the industrialization is going to occur. And that's where the enhanced productivity and expansion of agricultural output is also going to occur. So to be able to sustain that, you need energy, and you need energy that is affordable and priced to make industry profitable. Today, in Ghana, the cost of electricity is between 15 to 23 cents per kilowatt hour. Our neighbors in Benin, through the Arise Park, are charging 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Other countries are between 6 and 8 cents, and of course, Ghana and Kenya top with 18 to 23 cents and also 15 to 20 cents also. You can't really do very much in terms of, especially energy-intensive industries, with those kinds of costs.
No, we can't.
So fortunately, we have attracted investment into the renewable space in two forms. The first is building a 1.5 gigawatt solar park in Bupe at the head of the Volta Lake system. And this will be generated into the grid in increments, beginning with 100 megawatts this year to 2027, 500 megawatts through to 2027-28, and in 2028 by 2029, we should have the full 1,500 megawatts, with the last tranche of 900 megawatts being deployed. And this will serve not only the companies in the VEC, but also other stranded entities that have no power. And also become an important point for joint partnership with VRA and hopefully with GRICO to export into Burkina Faso. Because of Ghana's growth, you heard the minister say 7.7% last year on the non-oil front, electricity demand is increasing. And it's also increasing because you have now EVs, and then you have people with the ambition to deploy data centers and so on. So last year alone, there was at the beginning of the year, a spike in demand for about 700 megawatts. So to be able to achieve all these different elements of electricity consumers, we need to be able to cut off what we export to Burkina, cut off what we export to Togo, Benin, and also continue our exchange with Côte d'Ivoire. So also this project proposes the possibility of expanding and injecting into the 225 grid that goes to Burkina Faso as an export revenue base for the power plant.
Okay, I think you anticipated that there's going to be a question about power supply,
Yes.
consistent and...
But there's another component. We're also doing biofuels and bioenergy.
Okay.
Because one of the
Tell us
things
about
we've seen is that our dependence on fossil fuels also costs us a huge amount of charge on foreign exchange, several $1 billion a year. And if you're operating at $63 per barrel, and the next moment it goes $114 per barrel Brent, because some people decide that they must start a war, that affects all the efforts you've made at the macro level to build reserves up to $14.5 billion, 5.8 months cover, achieve inflation at 3.4%, and other indicators that have been read to you since yesterday. So the micro, at all times, must respond to the macro by generating increased growth as the most important form of resilience. So our view is that for us to be able to become less dependent on fossil fuels, we must also go along the line of biofuels, which are being mainstream now, with compressed biogas, liquefaction of that biogas into renewable liquefied natural gas are things that we're pursuing. And for the moment, we have two customers who need, I think, 600 million cubic meters of gas to produce sodium cyanide and also produce cement. So we're looking at that frontier. The prices are slightly higher than fossil fuel-based, but the technology has begun with solar, is advancing dramatically, and we hope that at some point we will be very close or a slight premium above fossil fuel-based. So it's a total industrialization program. And in talking about renewable natural gas, you're also talking about future chemical industry, because what we're doing with that renewable natural gas also feeding into the production of caustic soda by providing the energy and also sodium cyanide. Because Ghana, Mali, Burkina, Guinea, all of us produce gold, but we import all the sodium cyanide. And the idea is to build an integrated facility for caustic soda and sodium cyanide and basically pursue one of the key components of the 24-hour economy, import substitution combined with exports.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you've said that, and I think it's in all of the communications about the 24-hour economy. But there was part of my question that I feel as if you didn't really answer.
Please.
It was about the biggest opportunities, the biggest commercial opportunities that you see in all of this for UK investors.
I think the 5 or 6 opportunities that exist from the point of view of meeting domestic supply as part of our import substitution strategy, as well as being able to export. And I'll go one by one.
Yeah.
Food and beverages. Ghana imports $3 billion of food every year. So clearly there's demand. There's no issue about demand. The important thing is how do we manufacture competitively, consistently, reliably to feed that domestic market and create the surplus that allows us to export into West Africa, which is 425 million people, and then into after, which is 1.4 billion people. So food and beverages, you're not talking about just the 34 million people in Ghana. You're talking about 425 million people. And then you're talking about the 1.4 billion people. And when I speak about food and beverages, we're talking about the cassava complex, which is ethanol, bioplastics, pharmaceutical and food-grade starch, and all the things that come out of the cassava. When we talk about soya bean, we're talking about oil, we're talking about soya meal for the poultry industry, we're talking about the tertiary products from soya, lecithin, and plant glycerin for the cosmetic industry. When we talk about groundnuts, we're talking about crude groundnut oil, we're also talking about groundnut meal for poultry, and we're also talking about the possibility of exporting crude groundnut oil to China, because China like deep fry, and groundnut oil is the best for deep fry. So everything we do is linked and is structured along value chains. The next complex of production and products that are attractive is pharmaceuticals. Madam Minister has just told us how Ghana is the second largest producer of pharmaceuticals in the ECOWAS region. Ghana has a track record of selling generics, infusions, injectables into that sub-region. One of the things that is happening now is that the Food and Drugs Board has been now certified. So once Ghana drugs are certified by the Food and Drugs Board, which is at level 3 of the WHO tier, we can now sell directly into Liberia, into Sierra Leone, and into Gambia without any certifications from those countries. The African pharmaceutical environment is trying to remove the bottleneck so that once you reach certain levels in the WHO tier, then you can then sell without the requisite, with the requisite standards. And because we've reached those requisite standards, you don't have to re-register and then create the length of time that is required to sell into other people's markets. One of the problems, and I just like to touch on this, one of the problems with selling pharmaceuticals from Ghana into the export market is that sometimes, because they are being bought by the ministries of health in other countries, sometimes payment delays, or it takes a while, it takes a year, and so on. So one of the things we're looking at the 24-hour economy and working with the pharmaceutical companies who export is also to see how we can then do barter. So that if you sell and the Ministry of Health is not able to pay, what product do they have? Is it cotton that Burkina has? You create an SPV jointly owned by the farmer community, and that takes the cotton, liquidates it, and distributes it to those who have. So that we, as we're sorting out the payment system and after, we create new and innovative ways to be able to keep the liquidity going and the cash flow going. Out of the experience, we're building a Legon Innovation and Pharmaceutical Park. And that park is designed to invite manufacturers of NCD drugs, onco drugs, as well as the usual generics, the injectables, and also medical devices and also diagnostic equipment. And of course, these will be compartmentalized because of the rules governing these things. But the idea is to generate shared infrastructure so that the entry cost for small, medium, and slightly large pharmaceutical enterprise is not that great because they don't have to invest in roads, they don't have to invest in power plants, standby generators. So everything is there. Steam, all of that is available and is shared. It lowers the entry cost and the early capital cost, and you have enough money then to be able to generate your working capital to produce these products. The market is there because Ghana imports almost 80%, 70 to 80% of its pharmaceutical products. That demand is there. The market now is $600 million. It's expected to go to $900 million. And if you add the potential exports, it's far in excess of $1 billion. Madame has talked about textiles and garments, so I will not go into that. And then we also have, because one of the things we discovered is that if we're going to modernize agriculture, then we have to also look at what are the tools that we use to grow food as part of our food security strategy. Tractors, threshers, and many more. Particularly in the context where our post-harvest losses for most of our crops are between 30 and 40%, and for yam, it's almost 70%. So the idea is to build capacity in creating the machinery that allows us to limit these post-harvest losses, generate more income at the farm gate, and also create a more reliable and sustainable supply chain system, as I mentioned before. So we're also working with the University of Science and Technology, who have just given us 150 acres to build a Kumasi Machinery and Industrial Technology Park and connect it with SWAMI so that we improve the scale and the levels and standards of our work so that we can not only just sell into Ghana, but sell into West Africa. Yesterday, I met one of the bright and young people who are producing springs and producing nuts and bolts. And they tell me, I haven't verified it, but I have no reason to believe that they are telling us stories. The markets alone for articulator springs, for the trailers, in Nigeria alone, the orders that they have, which they cannot meet, is 580 million United States dollars. Wow. This is the reality of Africa and the reality of West Africa. There are a lot of young entrepreneurs, a lot of new and innovative ideas, but the problem is they have nowhere to go because there's no finance. So one of the biggest components of our program is the SME on-lending program, because 92% of employment is generated by the SMEs, and they constitute also 92% of our GDP. So you cannot avoid them. It's okay for a bank to come and sit here and say, oh my goodness, they're risky, they're unbankable, we can't find them when we give them money. It's a reality of the matter, you must solve that problem.
Yes.
And our way of solving that problem.
I know this is in direct response to yesterday's conversation with the financial institution.
Our way of solving that problem is to, one, look at what is the crisis. One, most of these entities do not have the governance and financial management systems that allow them to be banked. They may have the skill sets, but they don't have the governance and financial management systems and the audits that allow them to be banked and the procedures. So one of the things we identified is that if we're going to make any headway, we must build an ecosystem where ESO support, enterprise support organizations, adopt these organizations and develop them to overcome these challenges. So that's number one. So we build the ESO system into the risk mitigants that the Bank of Ghana will recognize and banks will recognize to allow the SMEs to be banked. That's number one. Two, you cannot build an economy, build an SME community, some of whom will become your large-scale enterprises, your multinationals, your exporters, if you insist that property can be the only basis for advancing credit to an entity. Because 90% of Ghanaians don't have property. So are we going to say, well, until all of us get property, then we'll be banked, or we find ways. So one of the things we've looked at, and we're working very closely with the central bank, is to see how they can accept credit guarantee insurance as a way to bank the SMEs, from as low as $5,000 to as much as 5 to 10 million United States dollars. And this is being done. This is being done with a private sector entity because, as you all know, and let me emphasize that, the 24-hour program is a private sector delivery program. We are there to work with them as enablers, and as somebody said yesterday, we're there simply to facilitate and not to lead. And what the work we're doing is that basically we're attracting private capital, DFI capital, into the credit guarantee scheme. If we're able to raise 40 million United States dollars by the end of this year, Q1, 2027, then that will give us Class A, AAA, reinsurance support of about 300 million United States dollars. If we reach the ultimate of $300 million in the equity base of that entity, then we can attract 2 billion United States dollars of cover. And that should be enough for us to be able to grow and expand our SME base, and even larger capital entities that find it difficult to raise capital. And I think that one of the things that Nana said in talking about infrastructure finance is that building a system of lending and building the credit enhancements behind it allows for greater confidence in financing. And one of the things we're looking at very closely also is that because banks are so hesitant in supporting SMEs, we should also create an SME securitization fund along the credit insurance fund so that the banks can securitize their loan book in SMEs and sell it out so that they can expand their loan book gradually, because as the pipelines are being generated, they're lending, that's also being securitized and then ending up on the exchange. So we utilize the capital markets as well. This is the total ecosystem that we're trying to build. Lastly,
sorry,
I've spoken to
I know he's going to be here for the rest of the day, so if you want to have further conversations, you can approach me. I know I could listen to you all day.
No, don't worry about it.
But we have to end this soon. So before we leave the stage, you've spoken about some of your expected milestones that are coming up. Are there any others? If we sit on a stage similar to this at a Ghana-UK investment forum next year or maybe in 2 years, what are some of the other milestones that you expect to accomplish that would convince us in this room and to the general public that truly you're doing an amazing job, and so more people should put their money into this?
Okay, so let me give you a quick rundown.
Yes.
Food and food security is very important for us because that's a foundation. The surplus from that activity is what is going to feed industry. So we're doing several things. We have an investor doing 60,000 hectares of palm plantation that will generate about 250,000 tons of crude palm oil and also PKO and the other
palm kernel.
Palm kernel oil.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for cosmetics and so on and so forth. Now that is structured in such a way that not only do we meet our domestic supply, which is about 175,000, but we also engage the Nigerian market, which has a deficit of about 500,000 tons. So we can then use that as a basis for export and also as a basis for value addition. The same, what you can do with cassava, you can also do with palm oil through the olanes, the stearings, and so on and so forth. So that is an important milestone.
Yes.
Food self-sufficiency, surplus for industry, and then export, both of the raw and also the value addition. What most people fail to recognize is that some of the countries that are so well endowed agriculturally, such as Ghana, along the lake is 8 million hectares of land. 4 million is in forest reserves. Another 4 million is available as arable land. Our target is 2 million hectares to produce the soybean, the palm, all along the lake and the tributaries of the lake. So we are able then to access irrigation at a cheaper
Yes,
cost.
because water is important.
We have lake transport at a cheaper level, and also labor that is young, able, and committed to improving their lives, and therefore becoming more productive. So that component is very key for us. Food security moving to industrialization,
Yes.
moving to exports. The other component of this strategy is the Tamale Cargo Hub. Tamale is the shortest distance from Ghana to London town, to Sainsbury's, to Tesco, and to all the other Waitroses and so on, where we can begin now to compete with our East African brothers to sell vegetables into the European market, into the North African market, and into the Gulf. So we're developing a cargo hub in the Tamale area. The concession has been given out by the Ghana Airports Authority, 150 acres to build the cold chain systems, build the cargo systems that will allow us to be able to use that as a takeoff point to penetrate these markets with vegetables and with fruits. And the feed for that is an agroecological park of 43,000 hectares, which we've just finished demarcating, that will then grow these vegetables and cut flowers. Because we discovered, thanks to the private sector investor, that the soil types that have propelled and pushed Kenya's cut flowers boom we have similar
Similar in
from
Ghana.
Kintampo to Tamale. Would you believe that on Valentine's Day, Kenya added 17 cargo planes to ship flowers to loved ones in these markets and other markets? We're like, even if we've got 6 of those, we're very happy.
So there's another opportunity.
And then there's several more. There's a deal room going on,
Yes.
and I would urge you very much
To visit the team
Yeah.
from the 24-hour Economy Secretariat are in the deal room.
Yeah.
So I would encourage the audience to visit the deal room during coffee break as well as lunch break to talk to there's the team leads for the big push, for the Accelerated Export Development Program. They are all going to be in the deal room. And like I said, Mr. Tanoh is going to be available to speak to people individually. So thank you very much. It's always fascinating listening
Real
to
pleasure.
you.
Sorry.
Always insightful. I think we have to stay for photos. I don't know where the photographers are. Yeah.